Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. Here, we look closely at the intersections of the postpartum window, the Ayurvedic perspective on health and healing, and the universal mother principles that are the keys to giving and receiving effective care. Hello, I'm Christine Devlin Eck. I'll be taking you through interviews with professionals who are making a profound difference in the lives of their clients, conversations with individuals brave enough to share their stories of vulnerability as a way to lift up others, and my own journey through birth, parenting, caregiving, and building a conscious business. We are here to honor the sacred windows, the profound transitions in life that give it all meaning. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
What if I told you that the same principles that help a mother heal after birth are the same principles that help you navigate conflict with your teenager, care for aging parents, or hold space for a friend going through divorce? What if postpartum care wasn't just about the 42 days after birth, but a window into how we move through every transition in life? When I was helping to create the curriculum for the Center for Sacred Window Studies and our conscious postpartum care certification, I was thinking deeply about what that underlying essence was that created the feeling of being cared for, that opened the door for someone to receive the care that we were offering. Because I knew from my own experience, if I would, like, as a care provider, if I was stepping outside of myself and really letting myself be in the present moment with my client and really tapping into what it was that they were needing in that moment, I entered into a flow that allowed for care to feel really effective. When I was myself in a space of maybe putting too much attention on how I was being perceived or how I was being effective or making sure that I was fixing all the issues or looking inward at my own stuff versus tapping into the service of it, there was a vast difference in how my care was received. And so I was so curious about what is it? What are the qualities of that tapping in that I needed to know and communicate with others who were entering into this work too, so that we could create this impactful program, this impactful paradigm shift that is the entire reason that I'm sitting here right now talking into this camera. It's about shifting the paradigm of what it means to be cared for after birth. But then as we entered further into this process, into this journey, into, years later, it's gradually unfolded into this universal spectrum of, actually, this is about how I show up today with myself. Actually, this is about how I show up tonight when my kids come home from school and practice and we do life together. Actually, this is how I'm going to approach a nourishing, loving relationship with my husband. Actually, this is what I'm going to use to apply to my work every day so that I'm loving what I do, so that I'm reaching the people who need to be reached with this work and this wisdom here. So ultimately, what we're talking about in this episode is how what we call the universal mother principles, which is just the name of them that downloaded. It's certainly not anything that I have created. It's something that I have understood and tapped into and find so useful in everything that we do in postpartum care and in creating access to conscious care as a whole, we're looking specifically at how these tools and the care tools that we talk about in conscious postpartum care are directly accessed through these universal mother principles. So this means that we are overlapping what we do in the sacred postpartum window onto life itself, onto our unique personal journey of personal unfolding and professional development. We are realizing that this is an embodied path, whether we want it or not. We have the opportunity here to approach the work of being a professional care provider in a way that we are no longer separate from that process. We don't have the box of now I provide care and now I am a human over here. We realize that work, particularly in this context where this is sacred work, this is a calling, this is work that is desperately needed in a culture that has become de-emphasized of our ancestral innate wisdom. So we realize that we have a whole world available to us to tap into that will skyrocket our experience of practicing conscious care, of practicing our professional calling in whatever realm that is, and also to dramatically change the experience of families and parents and people, not only our clients, but our children, giving them language through the way that they are being guided by us of how do I create relationships that nourish? How am I being nourished through the way my parents communicate with me? How am I growing into an empowered, creative being through the environment that's created around me? So I have done a very, long, thorough episode on each of the Universal Mother Principles before, and I urge you, if you're new to thinking about what these might be, to go back and listen to it at some point. But in this episode, I'm going to kind of more quickly go through some of these and actually all of them and apply like two pictures here. One picture of how are these showing up for me, Christine, in this moment as someone who is not in my sacred window. My youngest little one is 8 and my oldest is 18. And so how are these showing up for me? And this is not scripted. Like I am coming up with this from my heart in this moment. And then in the other picture is what might this look when I'm showing up for a client right now? And how am I sensing and intuiting what needs to happen here using these principles? So this topic right now is quite timely. I am going to be teaching at length on this and other postpartum care foundation material this winter in our program. We're starting class in a week, so I will let you know if this is in your heart, if you are drawn to this work. This is a solid, beautiful option for you. And we honor your divine timing, but let me tell you, you will love it, and we're here for you. So that is said. Let me know if you need more information. You can find all of it in all the places, but this is why I'm really thinking about this right now, is because I'm about to go super deep in this. It's also something that we did a beautiful exercise on in our Sacred Window online retreat that was last week. So this is the beginning of a new year cycle. We are given the opportunity to really look at what's ahead in a way that's not about making hollow resolutions, but that's about weaving balance into every moment. And so, what I love about the Universal Mother Principle framework is that it gives us the ability to transform everyday mundane moments into something that is medicinal, something that is fostering the balance, the spark, the expansion, the joy, the love that we want to have in our lives. It's right in front of us every single moment. And so by tapping into these, we get the opportunity to like actually manifest that. What is that for me in this moment? So this is why we're talking about this right now. This is why I felt really called to have this conversation, I guess, with myself on the podcast. Thank you for listening and for being here. Okay, let's go ahead and do these two pictures. So when we begin looking at the universal mother principles, which are these set of qualities in a way, I always start out with intention. So what are we intending? So for me, intention through the years, really guided by many teachers, but specifically my sister Julia, who teaches with me here, whose insistence on creating intention in everything we've co-created has really made that a non-negotiable process in everything. And so for me, for example, on the me picture, to just help you start to recognize some of these in your own experience, is like first thing in the morning. I hear my alarm go off and I snooze it a few times. But before I get out of bed, I'm going to make sure, because I'm still in that like kind of sleepy liminal space. And before I'm going to move, before I get up out of bed, before my feet hit the ground, I'm creating an intention of what I love, what I want to experience that day. There's no rules here. Like maybe I'm saying a mantra, maybe I'm envisioning something that I'm working towards. Maybe I'm praying for my child. Um, there's lots of different ways, but whatever it is that is being called for in that moment, it's like a setting up of expansion towards what I would like in my life. And that is intention today for me. With my clients, so we'll just use my client that I worked with yesterday. And this is a mom who just had her third son. And so we have this special bond as a mother to many boys. We could bond over this. But for her, as I'm driving to her house, I'm creating like I'm actually slowing my pace down. I'm slowing my breath down. I'm thinking about how I would like this visit to feel. And in that way, putting my careful, intentional attention on what I would like this interaction of conscious care to be. I'm opening the portal to that. So that's intention in practice, as an example. Let's go into these universal mother principles to vision them together. The first is simplicity. I find in my life that I really struggle with having so many responsibilities on my plate that I end up feeling like a failure at the end of the day when there's still so many things that did not happen or did not get done. And so while I can talk all day about saying no or minimizing the schedule, the fact I think of the matter for me at this time of my life is it is full. It's full. It's okay. It's just, it is full. And for me, I'm thinking about simplicity as shifting my viewpoint about what that full schedule must result with inside of me. So it's almost creating a new pathway of I love my ability to hold this fullness and not feel like it's oppressive or it's holding me down. So for me, it's almost the simple practice of maybe I'm leaning towards creating a, a statement or an affirmation that tells me that I can hold a full life right now. I am capable of holding a full life right now. And sure, I can definitely cut down on things. I can look at that to-do list and be like, you know what? Instead of going down a huge rabbit hole with this social media content schedule that I've got to think about right now, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes, heart in, but recognizing that I can do this simply. I can put the main things in. I don't have to make this a rabbit hole. That is a simpler process. That gives me some boundary. That gives me the satisfaction of knowing that my attention has been put to this place that is important. But I'm not going to make it into something that will then steal my time and attention away from other things that are also very important. So that's an example of simplicity for me. I think for my client, we talked about when I left, before I left yesterday, was looking at how can we create the simplest routines that help support her digestion, that help support her nervous system, her feeling of being cared for on her own, of herself was really feeling at a lack. So I said, okay, here's some ideas. I know it's really hard to create meals right now that your whole family is going to enjoy. She has very little ones. They have some, preferences that may or may not be ideal for the postpartum digestive system. But I said, okay, let's just do this. Think about warm foods. Can you just make sure that what you're eating is warm? She was having fairly regular bowel movements, but I said, okay, let's like just add in warm foods, soft foods, and make sure you're sipping on hot water every day. And let's see if that creates the daily bowel movement that we want to see. And that's huge. So we're not trying to like bring in an Ayurvedic chef. We're not trying to give her a book of recipes that now she feels pressure to cook. We're creating a simple, nourishing set of routines that she can love and feel good about. The next one is flexibility. And this is going to go kind of, I'm just going to piggyback right off simplicity because you'll notice in yourself that like these lead one right into the other. So for me, the ability to pivot each moment is an act of these universal mother principles. I'm going to interlude this painting of the pictures with the invitation to start to think about the elements. And there's no like one element that is for each one. Like we kind of have favorites that we think about, and at our Sacred Window retreat, we thematically like assign each day with a principle and assign each day with an element, but we can really have fun here and look at what element would I like to increase in my life and in my constitution right now, in my vikriti and my state of balance in this moment, and how might that reflect in these principles? And as I put my attention on this element, how can I increase that? So, for example, simplicity, we think about this as earth. Like I love thinking about the earth element and sort of that gross, like here we are, the solid, very clear, very evident element. So when I'm thinking about flexibility, I'm thinking about water. I'm thinking about how can I move with this right now rather than putting up resistance against it. And, an example of that right now, my oldest is a senior in high school, and I think I'm going to be talking a lot about this right now because it's very real and it's feeling very huge for me. And so as he's looking towards what is right for him in the coming year and some big choices that he has to make, and realizing that some of the goals that he has always had, when faced with these new changes in front of him, he's realizing that we're shifting and pivoting into a new direction, and we can do that with fear and resistance and you know rigidity, or we can do that with trust and surrender and love and curiosity. How are you sharing your gifts and passion for caregiving with others? In a world where education and awareness around the postpartum window is lacking or missing from our modern systems, we have a profound opportunity to shift that paradigm. You may be a few simple offerings away from making a truly impactful difference in the lives of mothers and families in your community. We are here to support your journey in the ways that work best for you. Schedule a conscious care strategy session to meet one on one with me, and let's identify the right next step for you to begin a path of conscious care for new families that fits your life and your needs. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session to schedule a time that works best for you. That's www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session. And as a parent, I am feeling all of it so acutely with him. And I almost have this umbrella, like outer perspective layer that I'm viewing it through that he does not view it through. So for myself, it's so much about trust and surrender and going with the flow of what is changing for him. And how can I support that and be there with him and help him expand into this in the most beautiful way that I can? For my client, she's now going from 2 children to 3 children and expanding into really an awareness of her own power of I can do this. She expressed to me yesterday that there was this shock, this surprise of becoming pregnant, and her first thought was, I don't know that I can do this. And so now she's continuing down that evolution of I can do this, and we literally are doing this. And so she's surrendering into this trust. And that is water, that is flexibility here. Compassion. Wow. Okay. Compassion. This is so soft. Compassion to me is also very watery, but there's also this beautiful balanced vata in compassion that allows us to like flow into that water element in a way that is also very subtle and able to penetrate into places that water can't. So, compassion as a universal mother principle, I think right now, I think about compassion for myself and navigating ways that other people hold expectations on me and staying in my truth, staying in my own understanding of what is right, where I need to generate my energy and where I can best serve, and how that might look a little different than what somebody else might be looking towards me and making an assessment of me. And that's really hard. It's really hard to, um, it's hard for me to not live up to expectations that others have. And also that, I'm going to use the word surrendering again, like that flexibility, that ability to let it be as it is over there and recognize that right here is the reality that matters. Yeah. And for my client, I think also it's really about compassion for herself as she's raising these little ones. And she expressed like it's been all about everybody else. It's been all about. And this client is a birth worker. She's a midwife. She understands how important this care is. But even when we do this work for a living, we have to intentionally prioritize ourselves because the go-to jerk reaction is to serve others first. And so she's navigating her own compassion for herself of taking the time that she needs and letting herself be vulnerable when she needs to be vulnerable, letting herself be held. And that's a huge invitation. We may come to that realization through realizing that, oh crap, I have not been good to myself. But it is that realization that gives us the perspective of actually, this over here is what I am moving towards now. And that is priceless. If we could go through life just knowing and learning from everybody else's mistakes, we wouldn't have the contrast, the experience to really embody these things. So have compassion for all the ways that we maybe don't show up the way we wish we did, because it is that knowing, that discernment that leads us into a new level. Listening. Okay, the next one is listening. So I, what comes up for me is yesterday, I have a tendency to like my pitta brain gets like, I get into do mode, and it's really hard sometimes for me to shift out of that mode because I'm like chugging along. And my kiddo started to come home from school, and I was trying to finish some things. And my 15-year-old, sat down, and I literally had to have like a mini conversation in my brain because it was like right interrupting me, like mid moment of like trying to finish one task. I think I was like trying to send a message, like finish a communication and get this sent off. And he came and sat down and hugged me like right in the middle of that. And I said to myself, I was like, put it down, close your computer, turn to your child and take him in, listen to his day. And I really just wanted to keep chugging, but I did that. And it was me listening to myself, instructing me to listen deeply to him. And so I looked super deep into his beautiful brown eyes and just like started taking him in, started taking in what he was telling me about his day and the things that they were doing at school, and just started noticing like you start to pick up on their vibes. Like when you take that moment and you really look at someone, I'm like, oh yeah, he had a pretty good day. Yeah, he's in a good space. I can see his energy is good. He you just start to realize like you're getting so much more than the words that are coming out of their mouth. So that came up for me literally yesterday. And I would say with my client, it was kind of this beautiful moment. And I think this has sort of been an evolution of being a care provider for many years, is that you can get over yourself way more quickly than you might have as a new person when you're worried about how you're doing, or am I meeting the expectations of this person? I was able to just sit with her and not feel like I needed to be doing something else that moment, and really just listen and really take her in and really get a sense of how I needed to encourage those simple routines for her. Like, what could she actually take on right now? Like, what is actually going to be a supportive and helpful and impactful set of recommendations that isn't going to overwhelm her. And because I could tap into that listening moment without any other layers of, frankly, like distracting thoughts, I was able to be an effective support person for her in that moment. Okay, so intuition is our next one. And this to me goes super close with that listening piece, super close. This is where we practiced this a lot last week in the online retreat. And I will make sure that a recording of that is available to you if you're called to go through that, because it was a really powerful opportunity to tap into how are we listening to our inner wise woman, our inner wise teacher. We are never, ever, ever, ever without guidance. The most powerful guidance we can have is going to come from that place, that source within us. And so, as a care provider, as a parent, as a friend, as a person, when we are like, I need to show up right now for myself or whoever in the most authentic way, we are tapping into that intuition, that source who helps us understand what is called for in that moment, particularly for times when, in the postpartum window. So I'm going to tell this story as in my own life. This is not something that's going on currently, but this is an experience that I noticed in my last postpartum window with my fourth child. And my colleague Julia was taking care of me, and I literally could not communicate what it was that I needed. I knew I needed many things, but I did not have the capacity of communication that was going to allow me to express it to Julia. And so I said as much as I could. I said, I don't know how to make a decision about that right now. I think it was food in that moment. And so she used her intuition based on how my digestion had been going, what I liked in the past, what we had available in the kitchen. And she created care for me entirely using her intuition, because I did not have the capacity to communicate it clearly to her. With my client, gosh, I think for her, it's really about knowing how to self-guide herself. She does not have a doula checking in on her all the time, but she has an incredible sense of self and resource inside. And so she is using her intuition on a daily basis to help her navigate every moment. And we can't get away from that, no matter who we are, or what our capacity for or our resources for enlisting care. We are our own primary care provider in each moment, and we're using our intuition all the time without even realizing it. But how can we more intentionally tap into that wise voice so that we know we are on an aligned path rather than just autopilot? Like, how can we really become empowered by knowing that we're tapped in? And this is where so many of the practices in Ayurveda and in conscious care, whether it's for postpartum or not, become supportive, because they are all helping us to tap into that grounding. This next one. So, For me this week, it's routine. Yesterday was the first day my children were back at school after a long holiday break, and I was craving routine, like routine with nobody else in the house. Routine that was on my own terms. So I know that I have these hours and I have these things that I would like to happen in those hours. And how can I also care for my home, care for myself, my own needs? So stepping into routine is a grounding act. This is medicine. In postpartum with my client, when we're working together, it is about helping her to recognize what are these simple daily things that I can do that are things I don't even have to think about. I can just easily incorporate them. That reduces vata dosha. That helps someone's nervous system to settle down and to feel steady and resilient. And grounding, this is very earthy, of course, the word ground. And in the postpartum window and in times where we feel excess vata dosha, whether we are experiencing a nervous system imbalance or depletion or going through big changes, just being in fall or winter, if you're in, the northern hemisphere and you have those seasonal changes that might create excess air and ether element, this vata dosha imbalance, all of these are applicable. Okay, let's move to non-judgment. This is a universal mother principle because it takes us, it lets us become unattached to fixed assumptions. In my own life right now, I'm thinking a lot about how I can release stories that are not supportive so whether it's about, a certain relationship in my life or like making an assumption about that person's way of interacting or being in relationship with me and not wanting to hold on to any negative attachment about what that might mean for me. So this is really helpful when I'm trying to foster great relationships. And it's releasing judgment on beliefs that I have or that person has and finding the connection and the openness versus putting up those walls of judgment. I'm not going to go super detailed into that because I feel like it's a little bit close to my heart, but maybe that strikes something with you. Maybe that resonates. With my client, I so beautifully watched her telling me a story about a colleague of hers who also was a client of mine. And, um, looking at this this woman's, path over the last year and, seeing ways that she would have wanted this person to experience something different, but watching her through her communication, like totally release judgment on that and just hold such compassion. It's like, compassion and non-judgment are these opposites. It's like when we feel that judgment come up, it's because we're maybe closing off the ability to feel compassion. And when we are in a conscious caregiving relationship with someone, when we are with a client or a child or anybody, when we release judgment, the energetic result is being in a space of respect and safety. And that person trusts that they are safe with us. And there's a place for judgment, maybe when there's, we're going to have it. Like, it's okay. It's okay when it comes up, but it's having the discernment to look at that judgment and ask ourselves, like, is this serving this moment in a way that I'm okay with, or is this coming in the way of something that I really want to encourage? So this is a universal mother principle. And so, there can be so many more. To me, this is how I understand looking at Ayurvedic postpartum care and then conscious care as a broader topic. This is how I'm able to like really go deep in there and apply it to myself. And as we, move out of these specific universal mother principles, we look at the concept of being present. And for me, you know, practicing each of these, though I like to play with the elemental connections of them, and they each, we could talk about each element and how that relates to each principle. But in the essence of time, I won't do that right now. But what I do love is recognizing how tridoshic, meaning how they balance each of the doshas and they help to bring balance to each of the elements, and how each and every one of them is a portal into gathering sattva around us and within us. Sattva being purity and clarity and peace. And how when we're tapping into each of these, any one of these, we're inviting an aligned experience that is true to our source. So what is your purpose in this moment? We don't have to know our whole purpose in life. What is your purpose in this week, in this season? What is your calling? What is your goal? And how can you use these universal mother principles to access them more fully, to release and surrender and trust into what's unfolding in this moment, maximizing every possibility in everything we do. So in this episode, which I didn't really plan on it being this long, but I do feel so grateful for the opportunity to talk about this, because as I teach, I understand so much more about it myself. So I invite you to share with me about what this brings up for you. These are not just principles, they're life principles. And I've had multiple conversations with folks after the online retreat last week about just how potent it was to spend so much time like really looking at what they want to happen in the coming year through the filter of not just these universal mother principles, because we did so much more than that, but through the opportunity of really tapping into that wise source voice, that sacred listening. So I am here for you in your journey. If that is towards learning more about Ayurvedic postpartum care and what conscious care can mean for you, for your practice, for the work that you're doing in this world, we are a resource. Our classes begin next week. If you're ready at the end of February, we have a start date then. But I encourage you to take that first step and just let me know if this is ringing a bell. And I'm here. Our community is here. And I'm so grateful for it. Thank you so much for listening.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Center for Sacred Window Studies has been training postpartum care providers, professionals who work with new families, and individuals passionate about postpartum care since 2018. We regularly host live free events alongside our online and in person training and certification programs. Hop on our newsletter list to get direct access to all of our events and community support gatherings. Our mission is not only in training conscious postpartum care providers, but in fostering a robust, informed, and thriving community of postpartum professionals. Once you step inside, you're family forever. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com to add your email to our newsletter list. You can support our work by subscribing to the Sacred Window podcast and sharing with someone you know who would love it. Thanks for being here and participating in the culture-wide shift that recognizes the need for and the importance of conscious postpartum care.